Well, that concludes the press conference at the White House. Donald Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister announcing their comprehensive peace plan for the conflict in Gaza. Now it is time for Hamas to accept this peace plan, the president said. Benjamin Netanyahu saying he supports this plan to end the war. Saying if Gaza rejects this plan, we will finish the job. Benjamin Netanyahu saying he believes that this will not just be a new beginning for Gaza, but for the entire region. Donald Trump giving quite a few details there. He said it wouldn't be appropriate for them to take questions from journalists until those documents are signed. Let's bring in our world presenter, Yalda Hakim, who was watching that press conference closely. The big question tonight, Yalda, is peace in the Middle East that little bit closer?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I think anyone who knows the region knows how complex the situation is on the ground. An idea of peace between these two parties has been floated for decades. So we'll have to wait and see exactly where we end up, SJ. But I just want to reflect on where we were a week ago when we were at the UN General Assembly. And I met with a number of Arab leaders from the region, whether it was the UAE, the Saudis, the Qataris. And they told me it was the first time that they were so optimistic in more than 20 months of this particular war, that they felt that Donald Trump was incredibly firm. Steve Witkoff was in all of those meetings with them. And they said that Steve Witkoff also said that they were going to basically not ask Benjamin Netanyahu whether he wanted to do this, but tell him. So this, I guess, has been very direct conversations behind closed doors. We'll have to wait and see, SJ, exactly how this plan comes about, because it is perhaps the most detailed plan that we have seen so far in what, and I'm looking at some of this. I mean, some of the things that I can see here are quite similar to a plan that that Joe Biden and Antony Blinken had put together. You know, things like the returning all the remaining hostages within 24 hours of an agreement, the access to an increased amount of humanitarian aid into Gaza, the gradual withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Strip. These are things that we've seen in the past, but what we should focus on is what's not in this particular agreement. And what's not is, for example, some of the wild ideas that frankly, in the end, drove some of these Arab states to the brink. And they did tell Donald Trump that, for example, the annexation of the West Bank was a red line for the United Arab Emirates. They made this known not just publicly, but they made it known to the White House. They sent a message to the White House. And when Donald Trump was with them in that meeting with Steve Witkoff, they basically told him that they would not accept the annexation of the West Bank. The other things like, for example, turning Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East, that is also not in this particular plan. This acceptance that forced expulsion of the Palestinians would be akin to ethnic cleansing. So that isn't something that they would push to get over the line. So we really have to focus on what is in this particular plan and what isn't. I think what's clear for Israel is that they believe that Hamas has no role in the future of Gaza. But I guess the question is, getting from the position that Hamas is in now, where they're holding these hostages captive, and we'll have to wait and see how Hamas responds. And I suspect the Qataris will twist their arm and have them release these hostages. There is a big space between that and exactly which Palestinian group, whether it's the Palestinian Authority or various other Palestinian technocrats and leaders, whether they end up forming some kind of group that oversees the management of Gaza. Let's just bring in our US correspondent, Mark Stone, who's also been listening in. Mark, I mean, it is, on the one hand, quite an extraordinary moment, what we're seeing here. It's a combination of all the things that you and I heard when we were in New York last week, what the Arab leaders were telling us, the Muslim majority leaders that met with Donald Trump on the sidelines of the General Assembly. I'm kind of focused on what's missing in this document and in this plan. which frankly was tilted towards the desires and the demands of Israel's far right. The sorts of things like annexation, for example, turning Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East, which caused a lot of alarm. I guess the big question is, where do the Palestinians sit in all of this and the future of Gaza?
Well, nowhere, in a word. I mean, the key part that is missing is Hamas. They've got to sign up to this in the short term, if any of it is to last beyond the next day. I think the most telling part of what we've just seen unfold over the course of the past hour is the fact that neither men took any questions, neither Trump nor Netanyahu, both of whom absolutely love a press conference. They love to hold the room, to bat away all sorts of different questions. They didn't. Why? Because this plan is very much incomplete. It is incomplete until the point at which Hamas, like it or not, agree to it. Now, it may well be the case that they believe, that the White House administration and the Israelis and the wider Gulf Arab countries believe that Hamas is now in a position where it is so weak that it has to agree to this. That may well be the case, but let's see. They have not agreed to it just yet. And on that, some quite chilling language from the American president, where he basically repeated what he said before, which is that if Hamas doesn't agree to this, well then, Bibi, you can go ahead and do what you need to do. A couple of other fascinating points, I think. I mean, you say that the whole Gaza Riviera thing is not there. It's not in the sense that Palestinians are not being told they have to leave the Gaza Strip, but there is a very interesting point there, where it's point 10, where it says many thoughtful investment proposals and exciting development ideas have been crafted by well-meaning international groups and will be considered to synthesize the security and governance frameworks to attract and facilitate these investments that can create jobs, opportunity and the hope for the future. For future Gaza. Now, if you are looking at this in a positive way, if you're an optimist, then you see that as wholly positive for Palestinians to redevelop their land. If you're a cynic, then you will see this as quite the opposite, as an opportunity for Western investment into the Gaza Strip. Who knows what role Palestinians would have down the line? And remember, for now, there is not one single Palestinian figure named in this document. In fact, only two individuals are named in this document by name. One is Donald Trump, who would effectively chair and head, with other members and heads of state to be announced, the Board of Peace, effectively the kind of kingmaker over the Gaza Strip. And the other person whose name is mentioned is former Prime Minister Tony Blair. Now, his name, as you and I were discussing in New York last week, has been mentioned for so long. We know he's had a key role behind the scenes in terms of what he believes he can do in Gaza. We'll have a listen to this. I spoke last month, earlier this month, in fact, to a senior advisor to the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. And I said to him earlier this month, what do you make of these Blair rumours? And I've asked him again today, and he stands by the following quote. He says, Palestinians in general don't see Mr. Blair as anything else than a war criminal and a mercenary, and do not expect anything positive to come from his involvement in a region he has already damaged. The legacy of Iraq and Tony Blair hangs heavy over the Middle East. Now, it may be the case that other Gulf Arab countries have come to a position where they think, well, do you know what? In the absence of anything else, maybe Tony Blair is the answer. But, you know, take it in black and white from a Palestinian in the heart of Ramallah, very close to what the Palestinian street thinking is. They do not like the idea of Tony Blair being involved one bit. So look, to sum up, Yalda, yeah, this is a move, certainly. It's a move by the Americans. It's a move by the Israelis. The Gulf Arabs and wider Muslim countries appear to be behind it in the absence of anything else. But Hamas is missing. The Palestinians are missing. There is a long way to go.
Yeah, indeed, very much so. Mark, we're going to keep you there and bring in our Adam Parsons. And Mark, you mentioned there about getting more voices from the Palestinians. In about an hour or so, we will be speaking to someone in Ramallah. But let's just bring in our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons, in Jerusalem to get reaction from there. Adam, just give us a sense of how this is being read in Jerusalem, where you are this evening.
Yeah, well, rather incongruously, behind me, you can probably hear quite a loud concert going on. I hasten to add, this is not a celebratory concert on the back of this announcement. I think there will be a lot of wait and seeing going on. Various contacts that I've been in touch with have said words to that effect of, well, I'm a little more confident than I was, but let's just wait and see how this one plays out. And then others are saying that this is a triumph of Donald Trump's megalomania, to quote one contact of mine, but it may yet play out into a successful plan. So I think there are all sorts of tectonic plates now moving for Mr. Netanyahu. For one thing, really interesting that he went into, barely had he got into that meeting, then he was corralled into offering an apology to the state of Qatar for attacking it. I don't think we should pretend that Benjamin Netanyahu walked in and said, by the way, Donald, while I'm here, let's phone the Qataris and I can say sorry for attacking them. I think that was a power play by Donald Trump, and I think that the president laid down the law effectively to Netanyahu and said, I will continue to back you, but I do not want to ostracize the Arab states, so this is the plan, and I think you need to sign up to it. And Benjamin Netanyahu probably looked at that plan and thought, yeah, I can go along with that. Of course, there are enormous questions. What will Hamas say? I mean, I think if you go between the lines, there are bits here where Hamas is not being expunged from history. In fact, Hamas fighters who lay down their weapons will be granted an amnesty, and those who do not accept that will, according to this, be offered passage out of Gaza. But the fact that people who are Hamas fighters will be allowed to stay in Gaza. And let's be honest, there's no longer this effort to kind of destroy the ideology of Hamas. I think that is a move forward, and it may be that pragmatically Hamas thinks that as long as it can keep its tentacles in Gaza, then maybe a deal that it can do, because it will release the hostages, but it will stop the war and it will get an awful lot of its own prisoners back. But there is also a big political consideration for Mr. Netanyahu, whose government is propped up notably by Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, two far-right politicians who have both responded with absolutely devastating messages tonight, not even on the basis of this plan, merely on the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu offered an apology to Qatar in both of their cases. So to take them in order, Mr. Ben-Gvir wrote a tweet saying so there was nothing to apologise for, this was wrong, Qatar was a terrorist state that had blood on its hands, and then Smotrich later on compared Netanyahu to Neville Chamberlain appeasing the Nazis. So these are the people who are propping up Netanyahu's government. Hard to see how that carries on, and I think most people here think that at some point those two will collapse the government. But what we don't know is whether that could happen tomorrow when Benjamin Netanyahu comes back from Washington. He's got a cabinet meeting here at 8 o'clock in the evening local time, or whether they bide their time until they think it is right for them to call another election. I think this deal certainly makes his government less solid. It makes a peace deal more likely. If he can bring home the hostages, the 20 living and probably 28 dead, although Donald Trump suggested a figure 32, not quite clear where that came from. If he can do that deal, bring home the hostages, end the war, stop the casualties being suffered by the Israeli military, stop that increasing purveyance, I have to say, of anger over the number of people who are being killed by the daily bombardments in Gaza. I think Netanyahu's gamble is that he will be seen as a statesman, and that may increase his probably rather slender chances of being re-elected. But this is a terribly complicated tendril, and as we've all been saying, until we get an indication of the reaction from Hamas or from the Palestinian Authority, it is really hard to know how this one is going to play out.
Yeah, indeed, very much. And as you say, that noise behind you, there's always a concert in Jerusalem blaring behind you. But Adam, thank you so much for all of your assessment there. We were just showing you that press conference between President Donald Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Donald Trump has said it is time now for Hamas to accept this 21-point peace proposal that he says that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is agreeing to, which will result in the release of the remaining hostages, access of an increased amount of humanitarian aid into Gaza. And we'll have to wait and see whether the other points of the plan can somehow be reached. We will be waiting to see how Hamas responds to this and the other Palestinians. We will be speaking to Palestinians in Ramallah in about 35 minutes' time on my programme, The World. But for now, SJ, back to you.
Yalda, thanks. See you at 9 o'clock. Well, President Trump, you heard a little earlier, said that the committee to rebuild Gaza will be made up of Palestinians and international experts, among them former Prime Minister Tony Blair. Let's speak to our chief political correspondent, John Craig, about this official announcement of Blair's involvement, because it had been mooted for some time, John.
It's controversial, but it's not a surprise. That's because, indeed, Sir Tony Blair, as he now is, of course, has been one of the key architects of this peace plan. The plan for Gaza, the transition, it's a Blair blueprint to a large extent. He visited the White House in August to discuss it with White House officials, if not the president himself. And, of course, he's got a long history of involvement in the Middle East, dating back to when he first became British Prime Minister in 1997. Why it's controversial, of course, is his 2003 invasion of Iraq, along with the US President George W. Bush at the time. But going back to the 1990s, 30 years ago almost, he was involved in talks with Arafat and others to try and bring peace in the Middle East. Then, of course, when he left Number 10 in 2007, he became a Middle East envoy for what was known as the Quartet, the European Union, United States, Russia and the United Nations. He gets on well with Benjamin Netanyahu. That's another crucial factor. So the President Trump will have said to Netanyahu, "You okay with Tony Blair for this role?" And he obviously has said, yes, that's fine. But it is controversial. It has been criticised already. Here at the Labour Party conference today, the conference with the big unions all voting for it, passed a motion against the party leadership's wishes to accuse Israel of genocide. And this evening, speaking to Sophie Ridge here on Sky News on the Politics Hub, the move was criticised by John McDonnell from the Labour left. Jeremy Corbyn, not surprisingly, no longer in the Labour Party, of course, has also criticised the move. So will be criticised by many on the left here, by all the opponents of the Iraq war. But you can see that from President Trump's point of view, and indeed Benjamin Netanyahu's, it makes sense because he is an experienced negotiator, an experienced go-between power broker in the Middle East going back nearly 30 years. And of course, from these talks with Arafat and others back in the 90s, then his role as the Quartet's envoy in 2007 onwards. And given that he's spent so much time at his institute, the Tony Blair Institute, has been closely involved in drawing up this plan as well. That's why he seems like the obvious choice to take on this transition role. So controversial, yes, but not a surprise given his long experience in the Middle East. And of course, we should point out that Sir Tony, as he now is, of course, he's always sort of wanted to tackle these sort of seemingly intractable international problems. Think back to the the Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland in 1998. Think back to his role in Kosovo and also in Sierra Leone. He's always wanted to take on these challenges in trouble spots around the world. So he's 72 years Oh, now it's what, nearly 20 years since he left Downing Street, but he's still a major figure internationally. Controversial, yes, because of the Iraq War. A lot of countries in the Middle East will not be happy about this. Many Palestinians won't like it, but clearly it's got this big support from President Trump and indeed Netanyahu, and obviously he will try and make a success of it. I mean, it's a tough problem for him to tackle, but of course he's taken on plenty of tough problems in the past, often with success, not always, of course.
John, thank you. John Craig there with the latest from Westminster. Let's just bring you an update on tonight's breaking news. This is coming from Reuters, a news agency. A Hamas official says the group has not yet received the written Gaza peace plan that was announced earlier this evening by Donald Trump. The announcement made at the White House in a joint press conference around half an hour or so ago between President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister. So that's a Hamas official saying the group has yet to receive a written Gaza peace deal. Of course, Donald Trump saying it is now time for Hamas to accept this peace plan, but Hamas saying they have no written confirmation of it as of yet. More to come at 9 o'clock with Yalda Hakim in her The World programme. Now, in other news today, the suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has refused to answer questions on the case during an exclusive interview with Sky News. Christian B was speaking after visiting the Office of German Prosecutors, who believe he abducted and killed the toddler. Christian B has always denied any involvement in the Madeleine case. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt has this report.
Did you kidnap and kill Madeleine McCann?
My defence lawyers have told me to say nothing on this topic, and unfortunately I'm going to have to stick to that.
Recently, Christian B, as he's known under German privacy rules, was released from prison at the end of a rape sentence. 2 weeks on, he arrived to confront the prosecutor, who says he was Madeleine McCann's killer, but doesn't have enough to charge him. The lawyer refused to meet him. Rejected and dejected, the suspect later explained his grievance.
Actually, I'm not feeling free. I still have this ankle track. And I'm followed by police. Ja, ist richtig. Ich war bei der Staatsanwaltschaft.
I was at the public prosecutor's office because I wanted to speak to Mr. Wolters.
Ich wollte ihn bitten,
I wanted to ask them to stop this witch hunt against me and give me my life back.
mir mein Leben zurückzugeben. Ja, mir wurde ausgerichtet.
I was told that Mr. Wolters couldn't be bothered to speak to me and that I should leave the building.
Ich soll doch dann irgendwie das Gebäude wieder verlassen.
Madeleine McCann was 3 when she vanished on a family holiday in Portugal 18 years ago. The prosecutor says drifter Christian B, a convicted child sex attacker, abducted and killed Madeleine, though he's never questioned him about her. Christian B is a man of few words. There are lots of questions we'd like to ask him. If it wasn't him, where was he on the night? What was he doing? Why was his mobile phone at the scene? And who was the mystery caller who rang him before Madeleine vanished? There are lots of other questions when he's ready to talk more fully. Christian B is due back in court next month to face a minor charge of insulting a prison warder. That seems to be the least of his problems. Martin Brunt, Sky News.
Model and TV personality Penny Lancaster has told the UK Tonight that she was belittled by Gregg Wallace while filming Celebrity MasterChef and felt let down by the producers of the programme. Penny appeared on the show 4 years ago, and when allegations first emerged about Wallace in November last year, Penny's husband, Sir Rod Stewart, accused Wallace of being an ill-mannered bully who humiliated his wife. Well, Penny discusses that experience in her new memoir, and I've been speaking to her about the book, her life in the fashion industry and the police, and of course living with rock royalty. Well, Penny, it's so good to see you.
Great to see you too.
This is a programme where your husband feels very comfortable. He's
Very
a friend
at
of the
home.
show, so it's really nice to have you join us as well to talk about your memoir. And I would imagine the life that you've led and the life that you're leading as the wife of Sir Rod Stewart, you've been asked to put pen to paper many times. Why now?
Well, I think it's that turning point that all us women have at the age of around 50, when the menopause hits in. For me, that was a very, very scary, quite traumatic moment because I didn't realise it was a menopause. I thought I was going through a depression of sorts.
Yeah.
It was in the middle of lockdown. And my GP at the time put me on antidepressants. And then it was my loose women gang that said, no, this is menopause. And then you start looking into that and you listen to other women's stories. And when they're in the turmoil of that, they feel like it's the end. And they're grabbing at straws and solutions. And they feel that their worth is no longer. But in fact, once you come through that, you feel that you can reinvent yourself and find that you have so much more to give back. So it felt like I suddenly realised who I was all along, and so I felt ready to write the book.
Yeah, ready to write the book and reflect on what you've done, are doing and plan to do. The opening to your memoir is quite hard-hitting. It's almost like you get the worst part of your life out of the way first, and this is the opening chapter talking about a sexual assault when you were a schoolgirl. You were on your way walking to school. Why did you want to open the book with that?
My decision on becoming a special police constable at 50 has been risen quite a few times, and I've sort of found it difficult to answer, you know, why policing? And I was like, well, why not? But actually, there must be something deeper to that reason. Yes, I was involved in a TV show that allowed me to see what it was like on the front line working with regulars and specials, but why actually decide to take it up? So I did do a bit of soul searching, and through writing the book, it's been a bit of therapy, I guess, and backtracking to some of the traumas that I went through when I was 12 on the way to school and attacked, and then later when I was 17 and starting my modelling career, going through another incident that was pretty harrowing, where I was drugged and assaulted. And I was a victim, a young girl, and preyed upon by male predators. And justice never was served. So somehow I feel like I'm there to help my community and look out for women on the streets of the City of London.
Because you're a special police constable, as you said, it started as part of a reality TV show, and it's something that you thought, actually, this is a bit of a passion project, you know, a way to give back to the community. And, you know, you went through the same training as everyone else and passed out, and you now operate with the City of London Police in the Square Mile.
Yes.
And just in terms of, you know, going back to that attack when you were 12, you're now a woman in her 50s, you know, fulfilling this role. We talk about the safety of women and girls a lot now. In fact, this current government have talked about it being an epidemic and something that they want to halve. What is it like out there at the moment for women and girls? Because it feels like not much has changed from when you were 12 in terms of girls being safe on the streets.
Well, I feel when I talk to a lot of women, which is the great thing about doing something like a book, is you have that platform to be able to talk about your experiences, which in turn people relate to, because sadly it does happen to a lot of other people, hence why someone like me, because it's not a journey just that I've gone through, it's got a journey that so many have gone through. And I think it was much more prevalent in my day, almost like, yes, well, that happens, and, well, you're a girl and they're men, and, you know...
Just forget about it, move on.
Yeah, whereas obviously it's a different world we live in now.
In terms of other topics that are picked up in your book, obviously policing a big part of your life now, but I know a lot of people will be picking up your book to find out what life is like with Sir Rod Stewart. The encounters I've had with him here on the programme, he is full of energy. Yeah, he's a cheeky one. He is full of energy, still touring. And, you know, as we speak, he's off in Vegas as part of his residency. And I wonder if there's part of you as a rock star's wife who thought, right, we're getting married and at some point we will have a normal family life and he won't be on tour so much. But it doesn't seem that that's the case. What is life like as the wife of a rock star?
Well, like you said, when we first met, it wasn't so much eventually there will be retirement down the line. You know, I just thought, well, because of big age gap, it would naturally, you know, he will be working less as he gets older. But
he's like Benjamin Button.
Absolutely. I mean, 80 and there's no stopping him. I think he always often talks about slowing down. And it's sort of, I think it's partly my job to help kind of gear that into place, because as much as it's wonderful that myself and our kids can go and join him on tour, it do get to a point where you just want to spend a little bit more quality time at home. But you know what? He absolutely loves every second of it. Yeah. So I wouldn't want to take that from him.
He did say that he watched Sky News while playing with his train set. Is that true?
Can't say train set.
Oh, what do I have to say?
It's a railway model
Railway model. I imagine a big screen in the corner of the room with the model railway in front of it. Is that what happens at Stewart Towers?
The layout itself probably spans 3 times the size of this studio. It was on...
So multiple screens then with Sky News on to cover the entire track?
Well, there's one with Celtic on.
Oh, of course.
And then there's one with Sky. And then...
I'm getting a real insight into at home with the Stewarts. Another difficult episode that I want to talk to you about, because you're being so open in your memoir, was the scandal surrounding Gregg Wallace, the MasterChef. And when Gregg Wallace was embroiled in that, again, Sir Rod Stewart came out to your defence, whereas you sit calmly and, let it all play out. He leaps to your defence as your husband, and he talked about you being bullied by Gregg Wallace on that programme. Well, we know what's happened with Gregg Wallace now. He has been removed from that programme. What was that experience like? Because we know TV can be a tricky place where certain characters and egos are allowed to act unchecked, as it were. We hope that the industry is changing, but as we know, that's not always the case. How do you reflect on that whole episode and your small part in it? Because, all women's voices are important and need to be heard. How do you reflect on that?
Well, from going back to the instance when I was younger, I wasn't brave enough at the time when I was 17, to go forward with that information about the details that had happened to me. And it just highlights how important now it is to speak out. And if you hear 1 or 2 people coming forward, there's more gravitas to the story and the investigation, the more people can come on board. So even though it seemed sort of quite minor what I had experienced compared to some of the other accusations, it was still vital that added little bit of detail to create that full investigation. Therefore, the actions that were taken. Being bullied as a child, I've learned from that. That's stood me in good stead moving forward, because then there's bullies in adulthood that you have to contend with, and somehow you recognise it. Maybe you recognise it sooner and earlier than other people around you might recognise it. But I've always been about looking after everybody, and women looking after women, supporting others, especially the underdogs. And I think in a community like working on a TV programme, you feel like it's a collaboration. I didn't feel like I was supported in that moment. I felt ashamed and belittled by the way Gregg Wallace had treated me, but equally I felt disappointed that the production company hadn't come to my rescue, basically. So there is a long way to go, but just by people coming forward and being honest about their experiences, I think will help in the long term.
Well, Penny, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming in to see us, and congratulations on the book. As you said, you'll be working on the streets of the City of London on publication day, but hopefully there'll be a glass of wine or something waiting for you when you get home. And, of course, pass our best on to our #1 fan, Sir Rod Stewart.
I certainly will. Thank you, Sarah, so much for having me.
Really good to see you.
Thank you.
Penny Lancaster talking about her memoir, Someone Like Me. Well, we did approach Gregg Wallace to respond to those comments from Penny Lancaster. He has previously apologised to people he has hurt, saying back in July that he knows he has said things that have offended people. He has denied a specific allegation of unwanted touching. The BBC referred us to their statement from July, in which the corporation said, although the full extent of these issues were not known at the relevant time, opportunities were missed to address this behaviour both by the production companies running MasterChef and the BBC. We accept more could and should have been done sooner. We want to thank all those who took part in the investigation, including those who first raised concerns directly with the BBC in November last year. We apologise to everyone who has been impacted by Mr Wallace's behaviour. Banijay UK, the producers of MasterChef, told Sky News, "We are extremely sorry to anyone who has been impacted by any inappropriate behaviour by Gregg Wallace whilst working on our shows and felt unable to speak up at the time or that their complaint was not adequately addressed. Ways of reporting concerns whilst working on our productions, protocols around behaviour and training for both cast and crew have improved exponentially in recent years, and we constantly review welfare procedures across our productions to ensure that they are as robust as they can be." Team Europe's players are celebrating after securing their first away win in the Ryder Cup in more than a decade after surviving a late comeback from the USA at Bethpage in New York. Well, these are the scenes as Captain Luke Donald lifted the trophy to secure back-to-back wins. It was a little bit louder when it was live, wasn't it? But the golf overshadowed at times. A hostile crowd making life really difficult for the Europeans. Rory McIlroy bearing the brunt of it and snapped back on more than one occasion, angrily responding to one heckler.
Shut the up. Apologies for the language there. The frustration sort of boiling over.
When you've got police dogs and the police coming in, were you aware when that was happening? And have you ever seen anything quite like that on a golf course before when you've been playing?
Wish they had let the dogs off the leashes. How satisfying is it to turn around to someone and say, quote, "Shut the up," and then stiff it to 2 feet? Very satisfying. Congratulations.
Well, a little earlier, I caught up with the European captain, Luke Donald, as he and his team come to terms with what they've achieved. Well, Luke, it's such an honour to have you on the UK tonight this evening. On a scale of 1 to 10, how's the head doing?
Actually, surprisingly well. I really haven't had many drinks in the last couple of months in getting preparation for this, so I thought it would be a bit worse. So I'm excited that it's just a mild headache right now.
Oh, well, that's good to know. It's the adrenaline carrying you through. I'm sure the hangover and the realisation of what you've achieved will sink in a little bit later on. Tell me how proud you are of this Europe team.
Oh, just it's hard to put into words. They've given me everything. You know, we looked at, you know, when I came repeat captain about 21 months ago, we looked at all the details to try and give this team the best opportunity. But in the end, you know, they have to go out there and perform. And a tough environment they did. You know, when it got tougher, they got tougher as well. And, you know, I'm so proud of each and every one and how they performed. And, you know, this is for them.
Yeah, it was such an enjoyable few days. But let's talk about that final day, because Europe looked comfortable going into it, and then something happened. The USA mounted a real comeback. Was there a particular point at which you were a little concerned?
Oh, yes. It was probably one of the most stressful days on a golf course, to be honest. It started off so well. We had so much blue on the board early. You know, I was thinking, this is going to be quite stress-free, to be honest. And then the matches just started to change, you know, around the turn. And, yeah, my stress levels started to go increasingly higher. Yeah, at one point, you know, it looked like we could win easily. At one point, it looked like we might not win at all and lose the Ryder Cup. And, you know, the waves of emotions was something incredible. Yeah, it's hard to describe, but I'm glad we got it over the line in the end.
Yeah, well, you're only the second man to lead Europe to home and away victories after, of course, the great Tony Jacklin in '85 and '87. And this is only the 5th ever win for Team Europe on the road. You talk about your attention to detail. And as I was watching the Ryder Cup over the weekend, you just have a little scroll through to look at all the backstory, the build-up to the tournament, because you've got the time with golf, you can do that. And I was hearing about the fact that you arrived at in America really ahead of time, so there would be no jet lag. When you got to the hotel, it was things like the hotel linen wasn't up to scratch, and even the shampoo in the showers.
Yeah, you know, again, we go into a lot of details. Obviously, rest and recovery is so important. It's some people are playing 5 matches in 3 days, you know, in a very tough environment. That is very energy sapping. So we wanted to create an environment where they, you know, flourished, and certain things, you know, about the rooms, creating a dark space, again, upgrading some of the things in the rooms. We changed kind of the bedding and the mattress tops and all kinds of things just to create a place, a sanctuary for those guys to feel as rested as they could. Yeah. So little things like that we try and pride ourselves on, that I mentioned in my press conference. But yeah, again, we have a great team behind us. They work tirelessly on this project for almost a 2-year period, and it's incredible to work with them. They're just amazing.
You talk about the environment and making it as favourable as possible for your team. The environment out there on the course at times wasn't favourable. In fact, it was hostile at times, downright abusive. It was difficult as a fan watching at home to get a real sense of what was going on. You knew at times it wasn't good. Rory McIlroy getting a lot of abuse personally, like the lightning rod almost for the team. How bad was it?
I think, as Rory said, it's a small subset of the fans that, they're trying to get in our heads. They're trying to do everything they can to put us off. And for me, that's out the spirit of the game, and it's just should be not tolerated at Ryder Cups or any event, to be honest. Greatness to me is not a win at all costs mentality, and I think some of the fans out there, saw it that way. And for me, it's just and my players, it's about rising to that and being your best versions of yourself. And I think they handled that situation very well. Yeah,
didn't work, did it? But in terms of that kind of behaviour in the sport, is this a line to be drawn under it, or do you want to see more being done? Because, these kind of things are copycatted at events, aren't they?
Yeah, and I'm sure some of that happens, on our side occasionally. It's something we'll have to think about and talk about. It's just hard to control because it's a small minority, and it's when you're in amongst a big crowd, it's sometimes hard to figure out who's doing it. So, again, props to all the police and everyone that helped this week. They tried their best, and it was much appreciated. But yeah, again, there was just a few instances which definitely crossed the line.
In terms of this success, I know you're going to take time to enjoy it after you've done all the interviews. You can go and celebrate with family, friends, teammates. Long may the celebrations continue. But do you fancy it again? Do you fancy leading Team Europe next time out, 2 years' time?
Well, again, to have the opportunity to do it twice, home and away, is pretty special. Obviously, I'd have to think about that if they wanted me to do it another time. Like anything, I take some time, I'll sit down. I don't rush into decisions, and I certainly don't want to give you an answer on that now, because I just really want to enjoy this moment.
Hey, it's not a no, and we will take that for now. Is the trophy anywhere about? Can we end the interview with a little trophy lift?
Yeah, sure. Here it is.
There we go. Well, listen, enjoy it. Thank you so much for a thrilling weekend. We all need a bit of a rest after that. And it was the miracle at Medina first time around. I don't think we've come up with a name for this one. Bethpage Black, what can we have? Back to back at Bethpage Black? I don't know if the team have got any suggestions.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
That one.
Well, it's a work in progress.
That's a good one.
Luke Donald, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. Enjoy every moment of this.
Cheers. Thanks so much.
Now, more than 8 years after the devastating fire that killed 72 people, work has finally begun to bring down Grenfell Tower. While some in the local community welcome it, others are worried about the emotional impact of watching its gradual deconstruction, as Rachel Venables reports.
Our flat would be basically on the left side. That is the place where I was trapped basically all night until short before 6.
Antonio Roncalato lived in Grenfell for more than 20 years. On the night of the fire, he was woken by his son Christopher, who'd come home to see the tower burning.
This is the photo that Christopher sent me that night around 20 to 2.
When I was outside of the tower, I remember hearing people screaming from inside the building, screaming for help and shining their torches for the phone, on the phone. When I do come around here, it just reminds me straight away of what was going on that night, It
brings you back to that night?
Yeah, literally. That's all it does coming around here, so I try not to
But with deconstruction beginning, soon the tower will be gone. And there's debate and division throughout the community about whether the timing to bring it down now is the right one.
It's going to be tough. Grenfell will always be in our head, in our thoughts, in our minds, but it is time to move it on and the tower has to come down.
My biggest worry is that people will forget, and people who never heard of the tragedy will pass by it and see what's that, then they won't even know what was there before.
One of the biggest concerns, though, is the impact deconstruction will have on local people's mental health. Samia lives in a flat right next to Grenfell Tower and still suffers from PTSD.
Every floor is going to take me back to that night, to the people behind the windows, to people screaming. The morning after the fire, I remember I felt like I was seeing someone running in the tower. I could see inside the tower. So I'm quite worried about having flashback again.
For some people who are quite frightened of looking at the tower or who want to avoid looking at it, the thought of it coming down might be a relief. But for many others, it's the resting place of their loved ones, or it's perhaps the home they lived in for many years, that memories of either their homes or their loved ones on those floors or their experience of what they saw on the night will very likely be re-triggered.
It's also spurred youngsters in the community to action. We met some of them at The Space, a wellbeing hub run and founded by Samia after the fire.
We're calling for a national youth-led inquiry to assess the mental health needs of children and young people following the deconstruction of the tower.
What damage could taking the tower down do to young people's mental health and well-being?
I do understand it can't stay standing forever, but I do think justice should have been served before it coming down.
It's going to have like, a negative impact because seeing the tower was always just a reminder, and just that not being there, I just feel like something's missing from that road.
So how will the tower be taken down? The work will take place behind the wrapping, starting at the top of the building and progressing down floor by floor. It's thought each floor will take around a month to dismantle. Everything removed will be loaded onto unmarked lorries and carefully covered before being driven away from the site. The government is talking to families and survivors about a second location where materials from the tower could be respectfully laid to rest. The banner with the Green Heart design has already begun to be moved down from the top of the tower.
This is my new home, finally. As you can see, this one here, they were in the tower. You can see here the dark and from the smoke. They try to clean it, and if you smell, the smell is still there. It's very acrid, very strong. Yeah, it will never go away.
Once the tower is gone, these charred remains will be all that's left of Antonio and Christopher's home.
The moment the tower is down, and I've said that many times, the tower is down, the memorial has to start to be built straight away. Then people will have a place where to go and remember and pay respect to the loved ones that they've lost and so.
They just hope that whatever replaces it is a fitting memorial. Rachel Venables, Sky News in West London.
The Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government spokesperson has told Sky this: "We understand decisions on the tower's future are deeply personal to the community, especially bereaved families and survivors. The decision that Grenfell Tower will be carefully taken down was reached after listening carefully to the community, considering all views heard by the department and expert advice." Well, let's just bring you the latest pictures we have from the White House. We are expecting Benjamin Netanyahu to leave. These pictures show him leaving the White House now after agreeing and announcing a peace plan for Gaza alongside President Trump. We've just had a statement from Tony Blair, who's going to be involved in the Board of Peace, headed up by Donald Trump to oversee Gaza should this deal be agreed by Hamas. He says President Trump has put down a bold and intelligent plan which, if agreed, can end the war, bring immediate relief to Gaza, the chance for a brighter and better future for its people, whilst ensuring Israel's absolute and enduring security and the release of all hostages. More next with Yalda Hakeeb in the world.